The first shovel struck dirt with a satisfying crunch. Mayor Harlow's ceremonial golden spade glinted in the morning sun as he lifted another scoop of soil from the patch of ground in front of Millfield's town hall. A crowd of about 60 residents watched, some holding small children on their shoulders, others clutching items they contributed to the time capsule that sat nearby on a folding table. Clara Jenkins stood at the edge of the gathering, her gray hair pulled back in a loose bun. At 73, she taught most of the town's adults when they were children. She watched Mayor Harlow dig with mild interest, her thoughts drifting to the items she'd contributed to the capsule, a handwritten account of the town's founding and a pressed flower from her garden. Let future generations know who we were, Mayor Harlow had said at last month's town meeting when he'd proposed the project. The vote had been unanimous. Everyone liked the idea of sending a message into the unknown future. The mayor's shovel struck something hard. A metallic clang rang out across the town square. Hit a rock, someone called out. Mayor Harlow frowned and struck again. Another clang. He knelt down and brushed away dirt with his hands. There's something here, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet crowd. Clara moved closer as several men jumped in to help. Their shovels scraped against metal. Within minutes, they had exposed the corner of what appeared to be a metal box. "What the hell?" muttered Frank Dawson, the hardware store owner. Nobody said anything about something already being buried here. They dug faster now, excitement spreading through the crowd. Clara felt a strange tightness in her chest as more of the box was revealed, a rectangular metal container roughly 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. Old, but not ancient. The metal was weathered but intact. When they finally lifted it from the earth, Mayor Harlow wiped dirt from the top with his handkerchief. His hand froze mid-swipe. "That can't be right," he said. Clara pushed forward. On the lid of the box, etched into the metal, was a date, May 15th, 2023. Tomorrow's date. A murmur ran through the crowd. Clara stared at the inscription, her mouth suddenly dry. The date was impossible. The box had been buried for years, decades perhaps. Yet it bore tomorrow's date. Is this some kind of joke? Mayor Harlow looked around accusingly. No one stepped forward. "Let's open it," someone called. "Should we wait until tomorrow?" asked another voice. "It's already been dug up," Frank Dawson said. "Might as well see what's inside." Mayor Harlow hesitated, then nodded. "Let's take it inside the town hall." Clara followed the procession into the building's main meeting room. The box was placed on a large table, and people crowded around. Mayor Harlow tried the latch, but it was stuck. Frank returned with tools from his truck, and after some effort, they pried the lid open. The smell hit them first, old paper and something else, something like dried flowers and dust. Clara peered inside. The box was filled with envelopes, photographs, small trinkets, and what looked like newspaper clippings. Mayor Harlow reached in and pulled out a yellowed envelope. He opened it carefully and unfolded a letter. "It's dated May 15th, 1973, he said, his voice hushed. 50 years ago tomorrow. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She had been 23 then, newly married to Robert, starting her teaching career at Millfield Elementary. "What does it say?" someone asked. The mayor cleared his throat and began to read. "To the people of Millfield in 2023. If you're reading this, then our experiment worked. We've buried this time capsule with the hope that it might serve as both a record and a warning." The room fell silent. The items enclosed represent our lives, our fears, and our hopes. Some contain personal messages to loved ones we believe will still be alive when this is found. Others contain warnings about mistakes we've made that we hope you won't repeat. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. The letter was signed by Mayor Charles Wilson, who had died in the late 1980s. People began pulling items from the box. Photographs of the town from 1973. Small personal items, a pocket watch, a hair ribbon, a child's drawing. And more letters, dozens of them, many in sealed envelopes with names written on the front. "Clara Jenkins," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Diane Mercer holding out an envelope. "This one's for you." Clara took the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written in a handwriting she instantly recognized, Robert's elegant script. Her husband had been dead for 15 years. "There are more," Diane said, pulling out several envelopes, all addressed to Clara. The room buzzed with excitement and confusion as more items emerged. Letters addressed to current residents from parents, grandparents, and in some cases, from their younger selves. News clippings about events that had happened after 1973. A detailed account of the town's history from 1973 to 2023, including events that hadn't yet been reported. Clara slipped away from the crowd, clutching her envelopes. She found a quiet corner in the back of the room and opened the one from Robert first. My dearest Clara, it began. If all has gone as planned, you're reading this 50 years after I wrote it. I'm sitting at our kitchen table while you're at school, teaching your first grade class. You're 23, and I'm 26, and we've been married for just over a year. Clara's vision blurred with tears. There are things I need to tell you, things I may never have found the courage to say in person. First, I love you more than I've ever been able to express. Second, I've made a terrible mistake. Clara's hand shook as she read about an affair Robert had had with a woman named Elaine Prescott in 1972, before they were married, but while they were engaged. The affair had resulted in a child, a daughter Robert had never known about until Elaine had contacted him in early 1973. I couldn't bear to tell you and risk losing you, he wrote. But I've carried this secret, and it's poisoned something inside me. If I haven't told you by the time you read this, then I was a coward until the end. I'm sorry, Clara. I hope you can forgive me. Clara sat perfectly still, the letter clutched in her hands. Robert had never told her. He had died of a heart attack at 68, taking this secret to his grave. Or so he had thought. Around her, the room had erupted into chaos. People were crying, arguing, embracing. Some had left, letters clutched in their hands. Others were frantically reading news clippings that predicted events yet to come. Mayor Harlow was trying to restore order. Please, everyone, we need to approach this rationally. Clara opened the second envelope. This one contained a photograph of a young woman with Robert's eyes and smile. On the back was written, Elaine and Robert's daughter, Sarah, age 16, 1989. The third envelope held another letter from Robert, this one dated 1980. Clara, I still haven't found the courage to tell you. Sarah is 11 now. Elaine sends me pictures sometimes. She lives in Portland. Sometimes I think about reaching out, meeting my daughter. But I'm afraid of losing you. Clara felt as if she were falling through ice. All those business trips to Portland over the years. His distraction when he returned. The way he'd sometimes look at her with such sadness. She opened the fourth envelope with numb fingers. Inside was a newspaper clipping from the Portland Press-Herald, dated June 12, 2023, a month in the future. The headline read, Local woman claims to be daughter of Millfield resident. DNA test confirms. The article described how Sarah Prescott, 54, had come forward after her mother's death to find her biological father, only to discover he had died years earlier. But she had half-siblings in Millfield, the children Clara and Robert had raised together. Their son Michael and daughter Elizabeth. Clara looked up, disoriented. Across the room, Frank Dawson was shouting at his wife, waving a letter in her face. The Peterson twins were huddled in a corner, crying over what looked like a future obituary. Mayor Harlow was on the phone, his face ashen. Clara gathered her letters and slipped out the side door. The bright May sunshine felt obscene against the darkness that had opened inside her. She walked home in a daze, past neighbors' houses where she knew similar scenes were playing out, the past reaching forward to shatter the present. At home, she sat at her kitchen table, the same table where Robert had written his confession 50 years earlier. She spread the letters before her and read them again, searching for some clue, some explanation for how this was possible. The phone rang. It was Elizabeth. Mom, have you heard what's happening? People are saying they found some kind of time capsule with letters from the past. Letters that knew the future. Clara swallowed hard. Yes, I was there. Was there anything from Dad? Clara closed her eyes. I need to talk to you, and your brother. Can you both come over tonight? After hanging up, Clara went to Robert's study, a room she'd preserved almost exactly as it had been when he died. She opened his desk drawer and found the small address book he'd kept. Flipping through it, she found no entry for Elaine or Sarah Prescott. But there was an entry for EP with a Portland phone number. She'd never questioned it. She'd trusted him completely. Clara spent the afternoon in a fog, preparing dinner mechanically while her mind raced. By evening, when Michael and Elizabeth arrived, she had made a decision. They sat at the dining room table, concern etched on their faces. Michael, at 45, looked so much like Robert it made her heart ache. Elizabeth, 3 years younger, had Clara's features but Robert's expressions. Mom, what's going on? Michael asked. The whole town is going crazy. Ellen Baker drove her car into the lake after reading something from that box. Frank Dawson has barricaded himself in his store with a shotgun. Clara nodded slowly. The box contained messages from the past. Messages that somehow knew our future. She placed Robert's letters on the table. These are from your father. They read in silence, their faces growing pale. "This can't be real," Elizabeth whispered. "Dad wouldn't have." "The box predicted things that happened after 1973, Clara said quietly. "Things no one could have known." "So we have a half-sister?" Michael's voice was hollow. "Apparently so. And according to this," Clara tapped the newspaper clipping, "she's going to come looking for you next month." They talked late into the night, moving from shock to anger to a fragile acceptance. By the time Michael and Elizabeth left, they had agreed to wait for Sarah Prescott to make contact rather than seeking her out. Clara didn't sleep. She sat on her porch swing until dawn, watching as lights burned in houses all over town. Millfield was awake, confronting truths that had been buried for decades. The next morning, May 15th, 2023, the date on the time capsule, Clara walked back to the town hall. A small crowd had gathered again, but the mood was entirely different. Faces were drawn, eyes red-rimmed. People stood in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones. Mayor Harlow looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Clara," he said when he saw her. "I was about to call an emergency town meeting." "What for?" He gestured helplessly. "To decide what to do. Some people want to destroy everything in the box. Others think we should study it, try to understand how it's possible. And then there's the question of whether we should try to prevent some of the things it predicts." Clara thought of the newspaper clipping about Sarah Prescott. Could she prevent that confrontation? Should she? "I think," she said slowly, "that we need to accept that the past is speaking to us for a reason. These messages were sent to us specifically on this day. We should listen." The town meeting that afternoon was the most contentious in Millfield's history. Some residents refused to attend. Others came armed with their letters, demanding explanations or seeking validation. A few, like Clara, sat quietly, already changed by what they'd learned. Mayor Harlow struggled to maintain order. "We have to decide what to do with the contents of the box," he repeated, "and whether to proceed with our own time capsule as planned." "Burn it all," shouted Frank Dawson, who had emerged from his store but looked haunted. "Nothing good comes from knowing the future." "That's not your decision to make," countered Diane Mercer. "Some of us need these messages." Clara stood up. The room gradually fell silent. "I've been thinking about why our predecessors sent these messages forward in time," she said. "They could have simply written letters to their loved ones and left them in their wills. But they chose this method, this impossible method." She took a deep breath. "I believe they wanted to give us a chance they never had, the chance to face our truths with open eyes, to make different choices than they did." She looked around the room, at faces she'd known her entire life. "My husband kept a secret from me for 40 years. He died with that secret, and it poisoned part of his life, part of our marriage. If he had told me the truth when it happened, I would have been devastated. But we could have faced it together." Her voice grew stronger. "That's what these messages are offering us, the chance to face our truths together, as a community. Not 50 years from now, but today." A murmur ran through the crowd. "I propose that we keep the original time capsule items as a reminder of this day," Clara continued. "But instead of burying our own capsule with messages to the future, we write messages to each other, here and now. The truths we've been afraid to speak. The forgiveness we've been unable to offer. The connections we've failed to make." The vote wasn't unanimous this time, but it was decisive. They would keep the contents of the mysterious box secure in the town hall, available for those who wanted to see them. And they would hold a ceremony the following week where people could exchange their own messages, not to the distant future, but to their present community. As the meeting dispersed, Clara walked alone to the old oak tree at the edge of the town square. She sat on a bench beneath its spreading branches and took out one final envelope she hadn't shown to Michael and Elizabeth. It contained a letter from Robert dated just a month before his death. "My dearest Clara," it began. "If you're reading this, then I never found the courage to tell you in person. But I hope that when you learn the truth, you'll understand that my greatest fear was losing your love. That fear kept me silent when I should have spoken. It kept me from knowing my first daughter. It cast a shadow over our life together that you never deserved." Clara read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the hollow of the oak tree, her own private time capsule. A week later, Millfield gathered again in the town square. The mysterious box with tomorrow's date sat on display, its contents now cataloged and preserved. Beside it was a simple wooden box where residents had placed letters to each other, confessions, apologies, declarations of love and forgiveness. Clara watched as people approached the box, some hesitantly, others with determination. Michael and Elizabeth stood beside her, holding letters of their own. They had decided to write to Sarah Prescott together, inviting her to meet them when she came looking for her family. As the sun began to set, Mayor Harlow called for attention. Today marks a new chapter for Millfield, he said. We've been given a rare gift, the chance to see ourselves through the eyes of the past and the future simultaneously. What we do with that gift is up to us. Clara stepped forward and placed her letter in the box. It was addressed to the town itself, to the community that had shaped her life. In it, she had written about forgiveness, not just for Robert, but for herself, for the blindness she had chosen over difficult truths. As darkness fell, someone lit candles around the square. In their flickering light, Clara could see faces transformed, not by joy exactly, but by something deeper. A recognition that the buried past was never truly gone, that secrets had a way of surfacing, that truth, however painful, offered a kind of freedom. Later that night, Clara returned to the oak tree. She placed her hand against its rough bark, feeling the life pulsing beneath her fingers. She thought about time, how it flowed not in a straight line but in cycles, how the past and future seemed to curve back on each other like the rings of the ancient tree. "I forgive you, Robert," she whispered. "And I hope you've forgiven me." A warm breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying her words up into the night sky. Clara looked up at the stars, countless points of light reaching her from the distant past. She thought about the mysterious box with tomorrow's date, about the impossible knowledge it contained, about the wounds it had opened and the healing it had begun. She didn't understand how such a thing was possible. Perhaps she never would. But she understood why it had come to them, why it had chosen this moment to surface from the earth like a long-buried truth demanding to be heard. Clara turned away from the tree and walked slowly home through the quiet streets of Millfield. In windows all around her, lights burned late into the night as people read their letters, faced their truths, and began the difficult work of living with open eyes. Tomorrow would come, as it always did. And whatever it brought, whatever the mysterious box had predicted, they would face it together, unburdened by the weight of secrets, strengthened by the courage to speak their truths. Clara smiled to herself as she reached her front porch. For the first time in years, she felt truly awake, truly present. The past had reached forward to touch them, and in doing so, had given them back their future.